They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. with a fleet of tow trucks. I still remember the night I decided I'd had enough. The way the moonlight bounced off that fresh, unwanted asphalt, the faint smell of burning tar mixing with the sweet Texas jasmine Elena had planted by our porch. That's when I knew they'd crossed the line. 3 years ago, my life was simple, peaceful. I'd retired early after selling my concrete construction company in Dallas. My wife Elena and I bought what we thought was paradise. 3 acres of Texas Hill Country, just outside the subdivision of Willowbrook Commons. Our little slice of heaven sat off the main road, connected by a private gravel driveway that crunched under your tires like cereal in the morning. That sound meant freedom, privacy, and best of all, no HOA. I paid extra for that privilege, $80,000 extra to be exact. The previous owner, a smart old rancher named George Blackwood, had separated the driveway from the subdivision land years before. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. He'd told me over a handshake, "This road ain't theirs. Keep it that way." I took his words seriously. I built a fence, posted my survey markers, and kept the gravel clean and firm. Elena, being a high school principal, loved the quiet. Our daughter Sophia, 15 at the time, said it felt like living in a movie, wide open skies, stars brighter than city lights, and neighbors far enough away to keep their opinions to themselves. At least, that's what we thought. Enter Vivian Ashworth. The woman was a nightmare wrapped in pearls and pastel blouses. She drove a white BMW with vanity plates that read Prop K-N, like she was proud of being the queen of property values. She'd been the HOA president for 3 years, which in her mind made her royalty. And royalty apparently could do whatever she pleased. At first it was little things. A note in our mailbox about how our fence didn't match community aesthetics. A flyer inviting us to HOA Beautification Day, though we weren't even members. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. I ignored it. My land was private, and I wanted to keep it that way. Then came the Tuesday morning that changed everything. I was drinking my coffee when I heard the deep growl of engines outside. Not one, but several. When I stepped onto the porch, I froze. A crew of men in orange vests were paving my graveled driveway, my private road, with black asphalt that shimmered under the early sun like spilled oil. The air burned my nose with the smell of hot tar. My fence posts lay ripped out, my survey stakes smashed. I stormed down the drive, yelling over the roar of the machines. The foreman showed me a clipboard with a work order signed by none other than Vivian Ashworth. Community Access Improvement Project. It read. "You're paving over private property," I barked. He just shrugged. "Ma'am said it's HOA land, you'll have to talk to her." I could have screamed. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. Instead, I grabbed my truck keys and drove straight to the HOA office. A little storefront down by the grocery store, smelling of old carpet cleaner and fake vanilla candles. Vivian sat behind a polished desk surrounded by her awards. Realtor of the Year, Community Visionary, Property Value Protector. She smiled like a snake basking in sunlight. "Garrett," she purred, "we're just bringing your rustic access up to community standards." "Rustic?" I repeated. "That's my private road. You had no right to touch it." She slid a folder toward me, an oversized map with my driveway highlighted in yellow. "Future Community Thoroughfare," it read in her neat handwriting. The previous owner verbally agreed to eventual road sharing. "I'm sure you'll want to contribute to our improvements." That's when I saw the invoice, $3, $200 for road paving, plus $85 a month in maintenance fees. I felt my jaw tighten. "You destroyed my property and you're billing me for it?" They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her manicured hands. "I understand this is upsetting, but the community has standards. You'll thank us later." I walked out before I said something that'd land me in handcuffs. By the time I got home, the road was finished. The once beautiful gravel path that used to crunch under my tires was now a glossy black ribbon, complete with decorative stone pillars at the entrance that read Willowbrook Commons, Grand Entrance, Esther 2023. Elena was furious. I could hear her slamming cabinet doors in the kitchen while Sophia stood at the window, watching her friends skateboard down our brand new driveway. It felt like being invaded in broad daylight. But Vivian's smug smile replayed in my head like a broken record. That's when I decided I wasn't going to be her victim. She might have her fancy letterhead and fake charm, but I had something she didn't. Experience. Years of dealing with developers, lawyers, and permits. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. I'd built half the commercial buildings in this county. I knew exactly how to fight her. The next morning, I went to the county office. The smell of dust and stale coffee hung in the air as I spoke with the clerk. "Check your records," I said. "Did anyone pull a permit for new road construction near Willowbrook Commons?" She typed for a while, frowned, then shook her head. "No record of any road permits, Mr. Rockwell." That was my first victory. Within 2 days, the county posted a bright orange stop work order on Vivian's shiny stone pillars. Seeing that notice fluttering in the wind made me grin for the first time in weeks. Vivian didn't take it well. By Friday, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting. I wasn't invited, but my neighbor Marcus, a retired Marine with perfect hearing, happened to be walking his dog by the clubhouse. Later, over a beer, he told me what she'd said. "She called you a threat to the community." Marcus chuckled. "They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. Said your obstructionism was dragging down property values." The next day I received a certified letter, $500 daily fines for failure to maintain common area. My own private road, mind you. That's when I realized this wasn't just about property lines anymore. It was about control. And Vivian didn't like losing it. I sat on my porch that evening, the warm wind carrying the smell of asphalt and betrayal, and made a phone call that would change everything. "Jake," I said when my old contact picked up, "you still got those tow contracts with the county impound lots?" He laughed. "Sure do." "Why?" I smiled into the night. "Because it's time this HOA learned a little lesson about property rights." The next morning I woke to silence that felt heavier than usual. No birds, no breeze. Just the faint tick of the kitchen clock and the low hum of our refrigerator. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stared out the window at that new asphalt road, black and smug under the Texas sun. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. The stop work order fluttered like a warning flag no one cared about. Then I saw her. Vivian, standing by the stone entrance pillars in her spotless pink blouse and oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand like some self-appointed queen surveying her kingdom. A white BMW idled beside her. She was talking to a man in a security uniform, one of those rent-a-cops you hire when you want to feel important. My road had a security guard now. By the time I reached the end of my driveway, he stepped forward and raised his hand like a traffic officer. "Excuse me, sir. Need to see your identification," he said, voice flat but nervous. "My ID?" I asked, my jaw tightening. "That's my house right there. This is my property." "Ma'am said all vehicles need verification to access community infrastructure," he replied. Vivian smiled that perfect realtor smile, the kind that looks polite but feels like a slap. "It's for everyone's safety, Garrett. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. You can't just drive through here like it's your own private road anymore." I took a step closer until I could smell her perfume, that expensive floral scent that always reminded me of fake sincerity. "Vivian," I said evenly, "you have exactly 5 seconds to move before I call the sheriff and report trespassing." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes flickered. "You go ahead," she said softly. Just remember, community safety goes both ways. By lunchtime, every neighbor in Willowbrook Commons had received a community alert email claiming I'd been verbally aggressive toward HOA personnel. The subject line read, "Ensuring Resident Safety Road Access Update." My phone didn't stop buzzing all afternoon. Elena came home from school tight-lipped and trembling. 3 parents cornered me in the parking lot, she said, her voice shaking. They said you're being investigated for threatening behavior. Sophia looked pale. Dad, people are talking about us online. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. There's a Facebook post saying we're suing the whole neighborhood. That night, I sat on the porch again, staring down that blacktop snake cutting through my land. The smell of tar still lingered, and every rumble of tires made my blood boil. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was insulted. These people thought they could bully me into submission. They didn't realize I'd built half this town's parking lots. I called my old business partner, Dustin Chavez, a traffic engineering consultant who owed me a few favors. Within 2 days, he delivered a full GPS land survey proving the road was 100% on my deeded property. He even printed it in color, highlighting the boundary lines in thick red ink. I framed a copy and nailed it right to one of Vivian's precious stone pillars. That move drove her insane. The following Monday, a new certified letter arrived, this time from an attorney. Cease and desist all interference with community property. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. They actually accused me of vandalizing HOA infrastructure by posting my own survey. The letter threatened $50,000 in damages if I didn't remove it within 24 hours. Elena slammed the kitchen counter so hard the coffee mugs rattled. They're trying to ruin us. I put a hand on her shoulder. No, I said quietly, they're trying to scare us. But it's not working. The next step was finding out why Vivian was so desperate to claim that road. That's where my old friend Rex came in, a retired sheriff's deputy who'd become a private investigator. He still carried that quiet authority, the kind that made people tell him more than they should. 3 days later, he showed up at my porch with a dusty manila folder and the smell of gas station coffee on his breath. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, flipping open the folder. Inside were copies of property deeds, LLC registrations, and loan agreements. Vivian wasn't just an HOA president. She was running a private land grab. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. She'd formed 6 shell companies over the past 2 years, buying up neighboring lots and using HOA funds to cover her development costs. My property sat right in the middle of her planned expansion. The jewel lot, Rex called it. She can't finish her subdivision without your road, he said. She needs it for access. Without that, her whole deal collapses. I leaned back in my chair, the hot wind brushing across my face. So this is all about money? Rex grinned. Ain't it always? That night, I made my next move. I spent hours in the garage surrounded by blueprints, land surveys, and notes from my old contracting days. The air smelled like sawdust and motor oil. Elena peeked in at one point, shaking her head. "You look like a general planning a war," she said. "Funny you should say that," I replied. "Because that's exactly what this is." By the next morning, the first part of my plan was in motion. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. I called the county clerk again, filed a formal complaint for illegal construction, and attached Rex's findings. Then I called my insurance company and reported property damage for unauthorized work. Each report triggered its own investigation. Paperwork, bureaucracy, the kind of slow, relentless force that eats corrupt people alive. Vivian, meanwhile, was doubling down. She organized community beautification walks, 10 or 12 of her loyal supporters marching up and down my road, taking photos of my fence and garden, pretending to inspect safety violations. It was pure intimidation dressed as civic duty. The The smell of their perfume and the clicking of their phone cameras filled the air like gnats you couldn't swat away. Sophia started keeping her curtains shut. "It feels like we're living in a fishbowl," she said quietly. I walked outside one afternoon while they were filming and raised my coffee mug to them. "Smile for the lawsuit," I called out. That got them scattering like pigeons. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m., but Vivian wasn't done yet. A week later, I went to the county office to check on my complaint, only to find that my original survey file had mysteriously vanished. The clerk, a young woman with perfectly straight hair and a smug smile, told me the system showed no record of it ever existing. Her nameplate read K. Ashworth, Vivian's niece. "You'll need to reapply for a driveway access permit," she said sweetly. "It'll take about 6 months to process." I could feel my pulse in my temples. "Lady, this road's been here since Reagan was president." She just smiled wider. "Then the paperwork should be easy." That was the moment I realized how deep this went. Corruption, intimidation, the works. They were trying to trap me in their web. But they underestimated something. I wasn't just a retired developer. I was a man who'd spent his whole life building and defending property, and I had friends who owed me favors. Vivian thought she'd paved over my driveway. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. What she didn't know was that I was about to pave over her entire empire, one tow truck at a time. If you ever want to know what true satisfaction smells like, it's diesel fumes at 3 in the morning, mixed with the faint scent of victory. That's what filled the air the night I finally took my road and my dignity back. It started 2 days before the HOA's big Community Action Day, the event Vivian had hyped up like it was the Super Bowl of suburban virtue. Flyers were taped to every mailbox. "Join us in beautifying Willowbrook Commons. Help restore community standards." But the fine print told the real story, a list of tasks that included removal of unauthorized signage, clearing of non-conforming barriers, and correction of roadway hazards. Translation: they were bringing tools to tear down everything I'd rebuilt. I didn't warn them, I let them think they had the upper hand. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. That Friday night, the neighborhood was quiet except for the low whine of crickets and the occasional dog barking in the distance. I sat in my truck with the windows down, looking out over my driveway, my property, now scarred by their arrogance. The blacktop shimmered under the moonlight like a bruise that refused to fade. Then my phone buzzed. Jake Morrison, owner of Morrison Recovery Services, had sent a simple text, "Truck's ready, 3 a.m. sharp." Jake was an old friend from my contracting days, the kind of man who'd towed semis off I-35 in hurricanes. He and his crew owed me a few favors, and tonight, they'd be cashing them in. I didn't sleep. I just sat there in the dark, watching the hours tick by, the smell of oil and dust heavy in the air. When the first set of headlights appeared at the end of the road, my heart beat steady, not with fear, but with focus. 3 heavy-duty tow trucks rolled in like ghosts, engines low, lights dimmed. The men climbed out silently, all business. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. Jake walked up to my window, his weathered face split by a grin. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Absolutely," I said. "Every vehicle parked illegally on my land is fair game." He gave a low whistle. "You got it, boss." By 3:15, the sound of metal chains clanking filled the air. One by one, every car belonging to Vivian and her little HOA mafia, the BMWs, the SUVs, the spotless sedans, was hitched up and hauled away into the night. Their polished tires squealed softly as the tow trucks disappeared down the road, taillights fading like justice slipping quietly into the dark. By sunrise, my driveway was empty. Peaceful, the kind of quiet that makes the birds sing a little louder. At 8 a.m., I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and settled onto the porch just in time to watch the chaos unfold. Vivian came storming down the street in her bathrobe and slippers, her hair in disarray, holding her phone like a weapon. Her mouth moved faster than her brain. "Where are the cars? They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m., she screamed, spinning in circles like she'd misplaced her kingdom. Neighbors gathered in confusion, a whole parade of lawn chairs, coffee mugs, and gossip. I sipped my drink and waited for her to look my way. She did. And when our eyes met, her expression changed from panic to fury. She marched up the road, pointing at me. You did this! You had no right." I stood up slowly, calm as ever. "Actually, Vivian, every one of those cars was parked on private property. My property. The same property you paved without permission." "You'll pay for this," she shrieked, waving her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff." "Please do," I said, pulling a folded paper from my shirt pocket. "Here's the survey. Here's the deed." "And here," I said, handing her the third paper, "is the county's confirmation that you never had permits for any of your road work." The look on her face was worth every sleepless night. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. Within 30 minutes, Deputy Rodriguez, the same one who'd warned her before, arrived, lights flashing. He stepped out, calm but firm. "Ms. Ashworth, you've been warned about trespassing. Mr. Rockwell's property line is clear. Now, do we have a problem here?" Vivian tried to talk circles, blaming everyone from her board to the county clerk. But when she mentioned the towing, Rodriguez stopped her cold. "Ma'am, towing from private property is lawful under Texas Civil Code, provided proper contracts exist. And Mr. Rockwell here," he said, tipping his hat my way, "has them." She sputtered, red-faced, while her supporters whispered behind her. What she didn't know was that Jake's towing company also held contracts with every impound lot in the county. By noon, every one of their cars was sitting behind a chain-link fence 10 miles away, and the only way to get them back was to pay the very company I'd once owned part of. The impound fees alone came to over $12,000. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. By the end of the week, the whole neighborhood knew the truth. The county investigation confirmed Vivian's roadwork had been illegal, her development plans fraudulent, and her HOA slush fund drained into shell companies under her name. The smug queen of Willowbrook Commons had built her empire on sand, and now the tide was coming in fast. When the sheriff's department raided the HOA office, they found falsified invoices, fake signatures, and bank transfers linking her to 3, quote, construction firms that didn't exist. Within a month, Vivian was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and property destruction. Elena and I watched the news that night in silence. The anchor's voice was steady. Local HOA president arrested in corruption scandal. Residents praise whistleblower homeowner for exposing fraud. I didn't smile. Not at first. I just sat there holding Elena's hand while the camera showed Vivian being led away in handcuffs, her designer sunglasses hanging crooked on her face. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. Sophia looked up from her homework. "Dad," she said softly, "does this mean it's over?" I nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart, it's over." A few weeks later, the county sent official restitution checks for the damages. The new HOA president, Dr. Hernandez, one of the neighbors who'd stood by us, came by with a box of fresh cookies and an apology on behalf of everyone. The air finally smelled like peace again. Jasmine and coffee, instead of asphalt and anger. Now when I drive down that gravel road, yes, gravel again, I can hear that familiar crunch under my tires. It's the sound of ownership. The sound of freedom. Every time I pass those stone pillars, still standing but stripped of their fancy brass plaques, I remember what Vivian once told me, "You'll thank us later." And in a way, she was right. Because without her arrogance, I'd never have discovered how strong my family really was, or how sweet justice can sound when it's delivered by diesel engines at 3 a.m. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served at 3 a.m. If you've ever had an HOA cross the line, remember my story. Take notes, keep records, and never let a bully tell you what's yours. Because sometimes the best way to fix a stolen road is to take every one of their cars instead.